What's good, everybody? Shalom. What's up? What's up? So, look, check it out. So, we got this Hannah Montana virus stuff going on, right? And interesting enough, I guess a few people, left off the boat and all that cool stuff. And, you know, last time I checked, they was trying to track them down. I haven't really checked up on it, got any updates on, where they at with it. Um, I think they got, a few people in quarantine. I don't know, right? But what I want to say is this, though. Um, like, 6 years ago, when they, hit us with the other thing, um, it started with a boat off the coast of Japan, a little cruise ship, and, people got sick, right? And then, they told us, like, yeah, coronavirus been found on cruise ship, outside of Japan. I'm like, okay, it's in the middle of the Pacific. It's not around nobody. Cool. Quarantine the boat. Nobody in, nobody out. Everything good. That's what I'm thinking, right? Would be the proper thing to do, right? Just going back to that movie that came out a while back called Quarantine. It's like a horror movie, right? And like a deadly disease broke out, and they basically like blocked off the whole building and didn't let people in or out. That was a horror movie, but I'm just thinking, I'm like, okay, but at least in a little more humane type of way, they got the boat out there as quarantine. So then maybe a week or so later, or however long it took, look on the news like, oh yeah, they're letting people go home, you know, back to their, country or whatever they came from. Then that's when I knew right then and there they wasn't serious about stopping the corona thing. Right? That's when I knew that. Then, of course, we know the results of what happened with, all that stuff, you know, people catching it or, being unalive from it and all that stuff. Even number 47 getting it, but I think I had Corona Light. Corona Light, it was light. It was light, folks. It's a little, right? So, then it's crazy. So now this situation started again from a cruise ship, boat, right? And you'd be like, okay, the first time y'all slipped up, y'all let people go, because people forget too, like with the Ebola thing. When that Ebola stuff broke out, they were flying doctors in there to the infected area. They wasn't taking the patients out. They was, bringing help there, right? And then if the doctors end up getting sick, they would, fly them out and treat them and do the cool stuff. But they wasn't taking the people out and sprinkling them around the world, right? So when the way they handled the corona situation let me know that they wasn't serious, then we saw the results and everything that happened, after that, right? And then this thing started, like I said, started off on a boat, and supposedly they caught it late, and then people end up leaving. So now, first time they purposely let people go home, and then the stuff ended up spreading around the whole world and basically shut the planet down. But now this time they caught it late, and who knows, right? Who knows what happens? So that's crazy when you think about it, and it's so and it's crazy because like we, not because we, not to sound like a conspiracist, person, one of them conspiracy theory type people, but you know, but the point is though, it's like we are naturally, when I say we, you know what I'm talking about. We are naturally good people at heart. So when we see the evils in the world, or we see these people do certain things, or we hear that they're doing certain things, it's hard to believe. And then it come off like conspiracies, right? But these people that run this planet is very, very evil. They're like, like build a laser and blow up the sun type evil. You know, that's what type of evil we dealing with, right? Cartoonish type evil, right? Levels of evil we can't even fathom, right? Cracking a hole in the ozone layer evil, you know, extincting the animals type evil, you know, poisoning the food, water, and air type of evil. You know, that's what we're dealing with, right? But you know, it's hard to fathom that because we ourselves, we won't do that, you know? So it comes off as being a conspiracy. And because majority of the people are loving, you know, people, you know, they can play that conspiracy card, you know, like, no, you guys, no, tripping, right? But going back to the Ebola thing, like, a while back, when they had that Ebola outbreak in Africa, when it was going crazy and stuff like that, uh, about a year or two before that happened, I was watching, I think it was either this Discovery Channel or the Science Channel, one of the two, right? So in that, it was a episode where where there's talking about, you know, ways that can destroy the earth, right? You know, and it's talking about different ways that, you know, that can bring on, you know, Armageddon or the end of humanity. And one of the things were like, you know, pandemics, diseases and stuff like that, right? So then they say like, well, we can take the Ebola virus and make it as infectious as the common cold, as the flu, to where you can sneeze and cough, then you can pass the Ebola virus. Because typically before then, this variant of the Ebola, you know, it was transferred of fluids, right? But now, you know, you can sneeze, it's like airborne, you know. So, and it's talking about how they can weaponize it and enhance it and make it more deadly, right? This is like a year or two before that outbreak happened, right? So then, could have been 3 years, but you know, it was very, you know, I just remember watching that episode, and I just know about maybe 2 years later, the outbreak happened, and then, you know, like, yeah, the Ebola thing, and it's tripped out how it played out, because it's like, yeah, the Ebola, you know, yeah, it's got an Ebola outbreak in Africa, blah blah blah, you know, it's, you know, then it's like, well, good thing, you know, then no, what they say was like, yeah, it could morph into this to where it can be airborne. Then that's when my antennas went up. I'm like, airborne? Where did I hear that before? Then I remember that episode I saw on like I said, either I can't remember what type channel. 'Cause I used to watch the Discovery Channel, Science Channel, both of them, history, all that. You know, so, but it could have been a Science Channel. I seen it on. But so I remember that episode where they was talking about how, you know, they can weaponize Ebola. So now in the science community, whenever a discovery is discovered, whenever a new finding is found, um, they have to publish it publicly, right? I forgot the exact terminology, what they call it when they do that. But so now if someone comes up with a way to weaponize Ebola and they find out a way how to spike it and do some crazy stuff to it, they have to publish it publicly. So what that do, that put the eyes of the military, that put the eyes of the other little psycho killers, wackos out there to be like, how could we take this and make this a super weapon, right? How could we weaponize this, right? And of course they do so because, you know, this place spends all their money on defense, right? Really offense, because they're going around fighting everybody. So yeah, you got that going on. So when you see certain things like this happen, right, and you know, one can only suspect or, just wonder, right? Like, where is this coming from? Like, what's the, what, where, where they getting this stuff from, right? How is it, you know, able to flourish, right? Who's in charge of this, right? And because again, I think here, what was it? Was it 500,000 people or something like that, or could have, that that perished from that stuff, right? A few years back. So, it makes you really wonder, right? Because and not to be all all conspiratorial with it, like, and but we do have to understand that these people that run this joint is evil to the core, and they want nothing more than to have total control, of this whole thing. Whether it's by book or by crook, right? They gonna get it, right? And of course, it's all about population control, because they figure it out. They want to control the population, and it's just like the old Egypt pharaoh, right? King Herod and stuff. They want to you know kill all the potential messiahs, make sure nobody rise up to disturb their power structure. So they come up with these different mechanisms and stuff of ruling, right? You have they're down in Antarctica, digging in the ice and stuff. They're talking about all the ancient bacteria and diseases that's frozen in the ice down there, and how it's important not to, disturb the ecosystem down there, because you can free up some of those ancient bacteria and diseases that end up wiping out populations in times past, right? I mean, with that information, and knowing that we're dealing with wicked, evil people that run this place, who knows where all these diseases, these coronas is coming from, right? Who knows? Where they found Hannah Montana at, right? The monkeypox and stuff like that. Crazy. But, that's the society that we living in. And you gotta understand that these people are very, very evil. Whether we like it, believe it, understand it or not, the ones that is in control is all about power. Power, 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 and control. And it's all to bring forth their new world order, because we currently living in a world order, right? And they're just trying to revise it and revamp it, repackage it, right? And they don't need too many people around to witness it, so they can disturb it and disrupt it. So they need population control. They need wars to go on. They need food shortages. They need people to be desperate. So then they can come in and say, hey, we got the solution. We can fix this, right? We got the problem here. We got the answers, right? When they created the problem, it's called order out of chaos. And these people have been operating through order, out of chaos for the longest. That's their whole MO, going back to their ancient, empires, order out of chaos, right? Stories about the little Emperor Nero, when they burnt Jerusalem, when they the final destruction of Jerusalem. They say the man done set fire to his own city and blamed it on us, but they can have a reason to invade and so forth. So, I mean, these people always been doing order out of chaos, right? I mean, they used to dress up like Native Americans and go fight the British, right? So always, and so it's just when we see certain things, you kind of just be at awe, like wow. But understanding that these people, I mean, they know nothing else but to destroy and to unalive. They came here with smallpox, right? And it's gonna sound crazy, but we can look it up. This is because everything I'm saying is not stuff that we don't know, just that we can look it up. And I tell you all the time, a lot of stuff I say about them is what they say about themselves. So I just repeat it. And what I'm about to say is what they say about themselves, right? Doctors, scientists, genealogists, whatever they call themselves, dermatologists, they'll tell you, them people, the coronavirus, the common cold, the flu virus, it's natural to them, right? It's in them. It's like a walking disease, cesspool, right? That's why you pay attention to them. Throughout the year, if you have the luxury of being around them on a year-to-year basis, you'll see them sniffle throughout the year. You'll see them kind of have a little cough, right? Throughout the year, right? And they not like bedridden sick. It's just or like that every now and then throughout the whole year. And because that stuff is natural to them, that's why when they came to this side of the world, came in contact, the common cold wasn't so common to the natives over here, right? They were dying. They were being unalive by the droves because of what they call the common cold, flu season. It wasn't so, seasonal and common over here, right? Smallpox, all that stuff. And the reason why I say it's natural, that corona stuff and all that stuff is natural to them, byproducts of them, is because again the common cold is basically like the grandfather, the genesis of these different variations of the corona thing, right? And then knowing that the common cold and the flu is natural to them, I mean, one can only come to the conclusion that the variations that mutate after, right, that they are the genesis of it. So, again, this is their science, right? Of course, I'm saying it the way I'm saying it, but it's their science. That, certain diseases and stuff like that is just natural to them, right? And certain things doesn't affect them as it may affect everyone else. When they travel, they get people sick, right? So, just interesting, right? But, who knows? But, yeah, I ain't want to be too long, though, but, just thinking about that little Hannah Montana stuff and how this stuff just come out of the blue and they just pop up with these, new stuff. We had the swine flu, we had the H1N1, the bird flu, the mad cow disease. Just had a lot of stuff going on. And shout out to China. So them people been living, seem like they've been having since I was a kid, pandemic after pandemic. Every time you see a video from China, they got masks on. Like, damn, right? So y'all always in an outbreak. So, but it's funny though. I was joking too, real quick, about going back to the corona stuff. when they're telling us, you know, to wear a mask and stuff. Then when you look at the map of the CC, what is it, uh, the Center of Disease Control thing, right? Um, you look at the map of where the outbreaks were. You know, it was global, right? And you look at the Middle East, right? Now, in the Middle East, now I know a lot of you know a lot of those Middle Eastern countries, those GCC countries over there, they're a little more modernized, Americanized. But for the most part, the Muslim countries, they keep the little face cover stuff, right? They got the little mask stuff covered. But when you look at the the CDC map, uh, they have outbreaks over there too. So I don't think covering and putting masks on is going to help. Because they walk around covered up all day and they got an outbreak. So, but yeah, funny. Um, but no, yeah, it's just crazy though. We see these different things happen, and just gotta understand that these people have a plan to dominate, and it's no coincidence, you know. And tripped out that this is the world we live in, that the stewards of this planet is the evil empire from Star Wars. So I'm gonna say shalom, peace, and all that cool stuff. Everybody have a cool, great, blessed day and all that. I'm out.